Hi, how are you? I'm Mr. Muso. Today we want to revise. We want to talk about African history, Zimbabwean history specifically. We want to talk about the Mutapa State. We want to focus on the downfall or the collapse of the Mutapa State. What led to the collapse? What led to the demise of the Mutapa State? So make sure that your pen and your notebook is ready because we are about to do a question on the downfall of the Mutapa State. Here is our question. To what extent were the Portuguese responsible for the collapse of the Mutapa State? To what extent were the Portuguese responsible for the collapse of the Mutapa State? That is our question. So before we answer our question, possibly I'll give you a brief background on the Mutapa-Portuguese relations. The Portuguese came in the Mutapa State. So when they came in the Mutapa State, they had to cause so many problems in the Mutapa State. What did they do in the Mutapa State? They started to monopolize the trading activities that were carried out in the state. They also started to introduce a new religion, a religion that was not familiar to the local people. And as a result of that, now squabbles started to take place in the state. Why? It is because of the new religion that had been introduced by Father Gonçalo da Silveira. So by so doing, we can see that the Portuguese were responsible for the downfall of the Mutapa State. However, although they played a part in the downfall of the Mutapa State, there were also other factors that were responsible for the collapse or for the demise of the Mutapa State. We are going to talk about those internal factors that we also supposed to consider when answering this question. Let's start by underlining the key words. To what extent Portuguese downfall Mutapa State. These are our key words. So what are we saying? Are we saying that the Portuguese played a pivotal role, played a significant role in the downfall of the Mutapa State? So this is true to a greater extent. Why do we say so? Why are we saying that the Portuguese were responsible for the demise of the Mutapa State? It was because of so many activities that they introduced in the state that led to the downfall of the Mutapa State. For example, let's start with the issue of religion. Father Gonçalo da Silveira, he came in the Mutapa State preaching about the gospel. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Jesus is wonderful. Receive Jesus. Live what you are doing. Embrace this gospel that I'm preaching to you. So because of that now, some people in the Mutapa State, they embraced, they to take the gospel that Father Gonçalo da Silveira was preaching. And as a result of that now, we see the people being divided. Why are we saying so? It is because some embraced Christianity, others followed the traditional ways of living or surviving that they used to do. So because of that now, we see that in the state, in the society, in the communities, we now had people who believed in Christianity, and we also now had people who believed in traditional ways of living. So by so doing, the Mutapa State was divided. So the religion that was brought by Father Gonçalo da Silveira divided the Mutapa people, leading to the downfall, to the demise of the Mutapa State. Another problem was that the Portuguese, they had to ban the Swahili traders. The Swahili traders were bringing a stiff competition between them and the local people. The local people, the local Mutapa people, they used to trade with the Swahili traders. They brought so many items. They brought jewelry, they brought beads, they brought exotic crops. And as a result of that, now the local people, they were benefiting from the trading activities that were taking place between them and the Swahilis. This led the Portuguese to become jealousy, and by so doing now they had to influence the leaders of the Mutapa State to ban the Swahili traders from continuing our trading with the local people. So because of that, now we see trading activities now between the local people and the Swahili traders being disbanded. By so doing now, we see that the people were now trading with only the Portuguese after the banishment of the Swahili traders. This affected the people. Why? It is because they were no longer getting so many items, so many commodities, so many goods that they used to get from these Swahili traders. So this affected the Mutapa people. So the Portuguese are responsible for the downfall of the Mutapa State. Another factor was that the Portuguese, they introduced puppet leaders such as Gatsi Rusere, Mambo Mavura, Mambo Capararidze. These leaders, they were assisted by the Portuguese to come to power. So they started to dance according to the tune of the Portuguese. So by so doing now, it led the people to be frustrated. Why? Because their leaders were no longer doing what the people wanted, but they had to do what the Portuguese wanted. They were aligned to the Portuguese. They were now so close to the Portuguese, and they were no longer close to other people. So that on its own led the people to be frustrated, leading to the downfall of the state. People no longer had confidence in their leaders. So that on its own now led to the demise, led to the downfall of the Mutapa State. Another factor was that the Portuguese had to take the lands of the local people. The local people, the Mutapa people, they lost their lands. Their lands were taken by the Portuguese, and they introduced what was known as the Parazo system. And by so doing now, people started to face problems of Lumo. Chikafu land was now scarce. Food became a problem. Problems of starvation, problems of poverty. Lumo was no longer adequate to the people. So by so doing now, people were frustrated. Why? Their lands had been taken away. Their lands were now in possession of the Portuguese. So by so doing, people were angered. They abandoned their state. They left their state, leading to the collapse of the Mutapa State. Another issue was that the Portuguese were now refusing to pay a tribute. People in the Mutapa State, they used to pay tribute to their leaders to show allegiance, to show respect, to show loyalty, but they were no longer doing that. That on its own angered the people. Why? It is because people were frustrated because the Portuguese were not respecting their leaders. Some of the people started to follow what the Portuguese were doing. They also started to refuse to pay tribute to their leaders. So that on its own led their leaders to lose value, to lose respect, to lose loyalty from the people, and the people were frustrated, and they left the Mutapa State, leading to the downfall of the Mutapa State. Another factor was that the Portuguese introduced what were known as feiras. The feiras, these were markets. They were trading areas, trading places where the Portuguese used to trade with the local people. For example, in Zimbabwe, we have got areas where people go and sell their items, their goods, their commodities. So these areas were similar to the feiras. So we see the people going to the feiras to exchange their goods with the Portuguese. But the trading activities that were done at these feiras, they were largely unfair. For example, people used to go with their iron tools, but they were given commodities that were not equivalent to those tools that they gave to the Portuguese. So the unfair trading activities that were carried out at these feiras led the people to be frustrated, led the people to be angered, leading the people to abandon the Mutapa State. Why? It is because of the unfair trading activities that were taking place at the feiras. Another issue was that the Portuguese, they introduced an army, a secret police, which was known as Chikunda. This Chikunda could rob, could beat people. It was brutal. It was so cruel. It brutalized the people. It had to beat people. So people lived now in fear of being roared, of being beaten by the Portuguese. You were always fearing for your life. They could come and rob you and beat you. So because of that now, people were always fearing that the Portuguese were possibly going to come. And if they came now, it meant that they were going to be affected. So as a result of that now, the people had to abandon the area. The people had to abandon the Mutapa State now. Why? It is because they feared to be beaten. How are you, Apostle J.M. Pisira? Thank you so much for being in touch. So because of that now, we are seeing that the people were frustrated because of the Chikunda army, the army of the Portuguese that had been introduced to brutalize, to terrorize the people. So that on its own led to the demise of the Mutapa State. Another factor that also led to the demise of the Mutapa State, it was the issue of monopoly at Masapa. There was an area which was known as Masapa. There was an area which was known as Tambarare. There was an area which was known as Luanze. These three areas, they were now monopolized by the Portuguese. The Portuguese were now having monopoly over Masapa, Tambarare, and Luanze. So because of that now, people were frustrated. Why? Because the Portuguese were now monopolizing the trading activities that were taking place at Masapa, Tambarare, and Luanze. So people were frustrated, and when they were frustrated now, they abandoned their areas because the Portuguese were now having monopoly over these three important areas. For example, if you are in Zimbabwe, we have got areas that have got gold in Zimbabwe. We have got Kwekwe. It's known that it is a gold area. We have got Kadoma. We've got Shurugwi. If you go to Shurugwi, we see that gold panning is done. If you come to Kwekwe, gold panning is done. If you go to Kadoma, gold panning is done. So because of that now, we are saying that we now have Portuguese, or we now have got foreigners now have been influence over activities that will be taking place in Kwekwe, that will be taking place in Kadoma, that will be taking place in Shurugwi. So because of that now, people in Kadoma, people in Kwekwe, people in Shurugwi, they will be frustrated, they will be angered, and they will eventually leave the area. Why? It is because these foreigners, they could be having now more influence on what was taking place in their area. So because of that, people were frustrated, they left the area, they abandoned the area. Why? Because of the frustrations that were coming from the Portuguese. So we are saying that the Portuguese, to a greater extent, they were responsible for the demise or the collapse of the Mutapa State. Another factor was that the local people lost their wives. These Portuguese, when they came, they did not bring their wives. So when they did not bring their wives, what happened? We see that my Jonso was taken by a Portuguese. My Petso was taken by a Portuguese. My Zuze taken by a Portuguese. My Petso taken by a Portuguese. Baba Petso be crying, my wife is gone. He has gone to the Portuguese. This one crying, my wife is gone to the Portuguese. This frustrated the local people, especially the husbands, because they lost their wives to the Portuguese. So by so doing, we are saying that the Portuguese were responsible for the demise of the Mutapa State. The Portuguese, they also introduced slave trade. Why slave trade? It is because when they took the lands from the local people, they started prazo. Prazo means prazi. Prazi rango, from the word prazo. So it means prazi. So we are saying that the Portuguese not have enough labor force. People could work at their farms that they took from the local people. They also introduced mining activities. They now had mines, but they did not have enough labor. So because of that now, they had to force the local people to work in their fields, to work in their mines, and as a result of that now, it brought anger, it it brought frustrations to the local people. Why? It is because they were used by the Portuguese as laborers, and they were not paid when they worked at these farms and also at these mines. So that on its own led people to run away. It led people to flee. It led people to abandon the Mutapa State. Why? It is because they were angered by being used by the Portuguese at their workplaces. So that on its own led the people to be frustrated, leading to the collapse of the Mutapa State. You move on, you also talk about another factor that angered the people. Another factor that angered the people is that the Portuguese introduced taxes. For example, cloth cover. The cloth cover was introduced by the Portuguese. So as a result of that now, we see that the people who collected these taxes, they were cruel. They were used force whenever they collected tribute. Ko. Yes, open the gate. Who are you? We are those people who are collecting tribute, who are collecting taxes. So if you delayed opening your gate, or if you did something which they did not understand, they could beat you. So because of that brutality, people were angered, people were frustrated by the Portuguese. Why? It is because they had to introduce taxes, and the taxes were so high. The people who collected these taxes were so cruel, they were so brutal, leading the people to be frustrated, and it led to the people to abandon the Mutapa State, leading to the collapse of the Mutapa State. You move on, you also talk about another factor. This one, it was an issue of forced labor, chibaro, sibalo. So we see that the people, they were forced to do what they did not want by the Portuguese. Working for the Portuguese, it was forced labor. Yes, slavery was there, but the issue of being forced on its own now, it brought frustrations, it brought anger, again leading to the collapse of the Mutapa State. So forced labor led to the demise of the Mutapa State. So these were the factors that were done by the Portuguese that led to the collapse of the Mutapa State. But however, there were other factors that we are supposed to consider when you answer this question. The demise of the Mutapa State being caused by the Portuguese. Which other factors can you talk about? Let's talk about the Marawi invaders. These were the people who were moving, looking for a new area. They wanted to establish a new settlement, so they to pass through the Mutapa State. They fought the Mutapa people, they continued with their journey. So because of that now, we see that the Mutapa State demised. Why? Because of the Marawi people who passed through the Mutapa State, and by so doing now, they destabilized the Mutapa State, leading to the downfall of the Mutapa State. Another issue was the rise of the Changamire State, the Roshi State, which was established at Mbire Guru Swanga by Changamire Dombo the first. When problems started to take place at Dande Chidima area, we see that Changamire left Dande Chidima area. He went to Bulawayo and established an area, a state which he referred to as the Changamire State at Mbire Guru Swanga. So because of that now, people who were frustrated in the Mutapa State, they left the Mutapa State, they moved to Mbire Guru Swanga, they joined Changamire Dombo the first. And when they joined Changamire the first, we see a new state being started, which was known as the Changamire State or the Roshi State. So the rise of the Changamire State led to the demise of the Mutapa State. Then there are also other factors internally. For example, overpopulation. People were now too many in the state, and that led to the demise of the Mutapa State. You also talk about internal problems such as succession problems. People were fighting against each other. People were hating each other. Why? Because of succession problems that were taking place in the state. We see that this led to disunity. It led to serious divisions, leading to the downfall of the state. There was also civil wars. Scarce resources now were there in the society. Resources were no longer adequate for the people. So because of the scarcity of resources, it led people to fight against each other, and it led to the downfall of the state. Then you move on, you also talk about another factor. You also talk about the drought, serious series of droughts which took place in the Mutapa State led the people to be frustrated, leading to the downfall of the state. So we are saying that the Portuguese, to a greater extent, in our conclusion, they led to the downfall of the Mutapa State. Although on the other side, there were other factors that led to the downfall of the Mutapa State, which are these factors: the internal factors and also the rise of the Changamire or the Roshi state. So that is what we talk about on the other side of the question. So the Portuguese, it was to a greater extent. That is what we have. That is what we should do when we answer this question. Thank you so much. I'm Mr. Muso.